my great pleasure this afternoon to be given the honor of introducing Mino Ode Kwiwak Nagumwak, the Good-Hearted Women Singers, founded by Jean Becker, Aboriginal Initiatives Director at Wilfrid Laurier University. I can assure you, you're in for a real treat. I've heard this marvelous group perform many times, and it always warms my heart, empowers my soul, and it gives me a special kind of peace. When I was first asked to be a part of this afternoon's proceedings, I was on sabbatical, and it was suggested I might say a little bit about my sabbatical studies. Little is the operative word here. My research question was simple yet complicated. What can Christians learn from indigenous worldviews and spiritualities? What can Christians learn from indigenous worldviews and spiritualities? The answer to that question really depends on how much time you have. The quickest answer is lots. There is indeed much to learn, but that leads me to my second answer, which is a little longer and involves three parts. I've learned and I continue to learn three things that are so very important. Number one, Christians need to listen. Number two, Christians should not take what isn't given them. Number three, Christians should not give what isn't wanted. First, we need to listen. We like to talk. At our best, we're excited about the good news about Jesus that we've heard, and so we want to share our experience. At our worst, we're bossy and try to tell people what to do, what to think, and what to believe. At both our best and our worst, we have a tendency to forget that the good Lord has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to remember that we need to listen before we talk. Second, we need to learn not to take what isn't given us. Christians in North America share in the horrid history of abusive treatment of our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, as well as the long and sordid story of removing children from their homes and dispossessing people from their lands. We who share in the economic and social advantages of this abuse are also obligated to engage in truthful reconciliation to right the wrongs of those abused. Ironically, in the guise of being friendly to our Aboriginal neighbors, Christians, along with others, sometimes import Aboriginal practices into their spirituality without giving it any thought or without seeking permission. It's hard to break the habit of taking what isn't ours. Lastly, we need to learn not to give what isn't wanted. Well, we might ask, what about the good news of what God in Christ has done for us? Aren't we obligated to share that? Well, Luther wrote that we cannot and we must not force the gospel on anyone. If that's true for the gospel, it's true for anything less than the gospel, which for Christians is everything. We dare not give our advice, our charity, or our presence where it isn't wanted. That's a hard thing to learn. But I really must break my promise and add one more thing that I've learned. A positive learning. When we're given something in the spirit of friendship and blessing, we ought to receive that with gratefulness. Such a moment is upon us. We're being offered the gift of song. I'm going to call forward soon Kelly Lorela to introduce the group. Kelly is their coordinator and a counselor at Conestoga College. Kelly's of Irish and Sami heritage. The Sami are the indigenous people of Finland. Kelly is also a graduate of Wilfrid Laurier University and holds a master's degree in social work. Without further ado, I invite her forward to introduce Mino Ode Kwiwak Nagumwak. Kelly, please come forward.
much, and I also thank Brenda and for inviting us to come today, and for Alan's words and giving some of that history. You know, Aboriginal people in Canada are colonized people to this very day. Sometimes we think that it's over, but it's still happening. And from colonization means that there's a dominant society and another culture that's in the minority, and that's what it is for Aboriginal people. And they are also an oppressed people. And there's just a sad history of the residential schools and Aboriginal children being taken away and put into schools. Our drum group is a bit of a way of healing, and as noted earlier by Alan, it was started by Elder Jean Becker, who has been a long-time community member, and she called us, the name came, it was the Good-Hearted Women Singers, or in the Ojibwe language, the Mino Ode Kriwak Nagamawak. And she just says there's one rule for kind of being in this group, and that people come with a good heart. And she has always had this drum group open for Native and non-Native people together. I think is her vision that one day all people of all cultures will come together and not be of one mind, but be of different cultures coming and working together and respecting our differences. Because we truly have differences. So through this drum group, we heal when we're singing. When we're singing, we're praying. And you know, the women in our group over the years have experienced different traumas, violence or abusive relationships, trying to find their voice. You know, we never really started out with singing in public. It really was us getting together every week just to sing and to be amongst each other, to laugh despite maybe the pain that's in our lives. And when we sing in public now, there's a strength that comes from that. When we can find that voice and lead up a song, it changes us. It really does. And we have a teaching, and it's, I have a sweetgrass, a braided sweetgrass here. And it really does smell quite sweet. But one strand of this grass, when it's by itself, it breaks very, very easily. And so that could happen to a woman as well. When they're on their own and they're struggling, it's sometimes hard to find the strength within. But when you're surrounded by others, you find strength with that. So many strands braided together is what makes us strong. And so if a woman forgets the words or their voice cracks, she knows that there's going to be somebody to come in and pick her up, and the song's going to continue all the way to the end. So we're by no means professionals, and really we just get together for the joy of singing and the spirit that it brings out in us when we are singing. And I guess with the songs, we're going to start with a welcome song, and at the very end we'll send off. We're going to welcome in the ancestors, everybody here, those who passed before us. We believe that those who have passed on have, their spirit is with us, and we draw strength from that. And we're also going to sing a song about power, and just when it was taken away, and now we're bringing back that power to ourselves. And about friendship, building those relationships with all people, because that's what this group is about, is building those connections with everyone so that we're healing together. And then also, near the end, there will be another song. It's a bit of a feisty song, and it is, again, about us, you know, connecting with our identity of who we are and where we come from, and to be able to give voice to that. So I hope you enjoy what we have to bring to you. Be rich.
We bring a gift of tobacco as our thanks for the incredible birth and for you being here today with us.
What we were just offered was tobacco ties, and in those, the people who had prepared those put their prayers and good intentions into that tobacco, and we've just tied them on the drums. And so as we're singing, those prayers are coming into our song. So we thank you very much for those ties. And usually we do start with a smudging and a prayer. We have done our smudging already to kind of clear our spirit and come in a good way. But we would like to open with a prayer, and our elder will help us with that prayer.
When we pray, we're in a circle, and the right hand is on your neighbor to the right, your left hand, and okay. I do this more for me, I think, than for the people in the group. They know what they're doing, and like we said, I am the elder. So the right hand goes on top to give the blessing, and the left hand underneath to receive the blessing. So all the time we're praying, we're giving and we're receiving blessings. Okay, louder? All right. Did everyone, who can't hear me back there? How far back?
Just pray. We're good.
Okay. Ani Mishomas Ajakan Kwainin Dishnakaz. Miigwech Creator, for bringing us here today to be able to share our culture and to be able to gain knowledge of our sisters, our neighbors, and our friends. For people that we haven't met are just friends that we haven't met. I'd like to thank Creator for the two-legged, the four-legged, the swimmers, the crawlers, the flyers, and all those that inhabit our world. Our grandmother, the moon, who controls the tides and the waters, Father Sky, and the sun that warms us and keeps the seasons going. All of these things are part of our natural world, and they're all part of us, and we're part of them. Miigwech Creator, for the blessings of this day. Miigwech, Aho, all my relations.
Hey
going to do a traveling song, and we'll face each of the four directions to honor the ancestors in those four directions, as well as our guides and teachers in those four directions. You can.
On behalf of all of us here today, I want to thank you. I'm not going to try to say the name, but I want to thank you all for coming and sharing that wonderful, wonderful gift of drumming and of music and prayer and traditions with us. I just found it truly moving and a wonderful thing for you to have shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies. That was amazing. You certainly are a good hearted women. I'd like to now call upon Marge Waters-Knievel for greetings and appreciation. She is the chair of the Board of Governors of the Waterloo Lutheran Seminary.
Thanks, Brenda. And just as you are all leaving, thank you. There's something about drumming that just resonates like right down to the bone marrow. Just fantastic. Thank you for your prayers and your songs. Really great. Really great. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure once again to bring you greetings from the board. But just before I do that, I want to speak personally for a minute. I came in this morning just as the students were getting up to speak, and I was really quite struck by some of the things that they said. So just to share with you, in my professional life, I do career counseling, and as part of that, I'm one of these people who does that psychological testing that all of our seminary students are so scared of. One of the things that we look for when we do that sort of testing is to see what people think about their own accomplishments. Do they understand, and are they prepared to embrace the positive impact that they have on people? And of course, there are a number of people who fall at one end of that spectrum, which is that they really don't embrace that or understand that or acknowledge that for themselves. And I think I can say this because I'm one of us. I think in particular, church women don't necessarily embrace what a positive impact we can have on other people. So just to remind you of what has already been said about you today, which I fully agree with and totally appreciate. Joanne, who called you all big red envelopes, she said, "We're certain that you will always be there for us." Sylvia said, "These are my people. You are the quiet strength that upholds all of us." Chris and Dr. Frimmer said, "You give us a sense of community." Bishop Michael said, "Ponder God's presence in the lives of the women who made those quilts." Ponder God's presence in the lives of the women who made those quilts. And Steve Hofford said, "You are a sign of God in the world." Believe that. Embrace that. Rejoice in that. And thank God for it, because that is really true. I thank you for all the support you've given me personally over the years, and you've given the seminary. And now from the board's perspective, I want to thank you for all that you do in a concrete way. Those CPE bursaries year after year after year are so well appreciated. The decorations at Christmas time, the many receptions that you host, the audio-visual equipment that is ours because of your generosity. Have you seen that great big huge honking monitor? I mean, it's like enormous. And we now use it in the chapel, and we're trying to do more and more things online, and we couldn't do that if we didn't have that equipment, and we thank you for it. And then in particular, one thing that I never fail to notice as I come in and out of the seminary, those beautiful, beautiful gardens. Thank you so much. We really, really do appreciate it. So from my heart, and from the board of directors, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those kind words, Marge. I'd like to bring up Betty Conmiller, who's going to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. We have a great lineup, and I'm hoping you're going to enjoy yourself. I'm going to hand it over to capable Betty. Do you want to speak up there, Betty? All three over there? Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies. Well, it's my pleasure today to introduce our speakers. Not one, but three. The first one is a special person to me, and I think you probably all know him. Dr. William Hughes, who is the bishop, or the retired bishop, I should say, of the Eastern Canada Synod. Second one is Dr. Richard Crossman, who is a retired principal dean of the seminary. And the third is Archivist Julia Hendy of Wilfrid Laurier University. So first, Bishop Hughes. I must make an apology because I lost your bio. No. But you're just going to have to, I'm going to have to rely on my memory, what I know about Bill. He was a classmate of my husband's, so I know him quite well. He's a graduate of Waterloo Lutheran University and the seminary in 1957. He has his PhD from the University of Toronto and an honorary doctorate from the University of Western Ontario. His first parish was in Renfrew, Ontario. Our first parish was in Arnprior, Ontario, 16 miles apart. So we saw quite a lot of the Hugheses during that time. He is married to the former Barbara Hughes, Lots, and they have 3 children, David and Matthew from Toronto, and Andrea in Kitchener here. They have 7 grandchildren. Now, Pastor here says, and I use the term pastor because I'm so used to that. He has held many positions in the Lutheran Church, and too many to evaluate or even indicate today. He has some hobbies that I should share with you. One is puttering around his cottage in Pappan Lake, and the other one is playing solo. Next week, he will turn 80, so we're going to be celebrating his 80th birthday, which is a real milestone. I don't even know where he's sitting, all the way back there. Our second special speaker today is the Reverend Dr. Richard Crossman, who is the retired Principal Dean of the seminary. Dr. Crossman was born in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Now, that's south of our border, way over in Manitoba. And it was interesting to find out that his family used to, well, maybe they still do, shop in Winnipeg. They went north to shop, whereas it's the reverse here. We go south to shop in Buffalo. Dr. Crossman is a graduate of Wittenberg University with his BA in 1961. Hammond Divinity School in 1965, and the University of Chicago with his PhD in 1975. After various teaching positions in the U.S., he came to Waterloo Lutheran Seminary and taught from 1970 to 2005. He has written a book on the theologian Paul Tillich, who was his mentor, and he's contributed many articles to periodicals and other books from the Lutheran Church as a whole. The thing that he's probably going to be remembered for is that he was what shall we say, probably bringing the idea of accreditation to the seminary, which up until that time was just a seminary. Now it's accredited and known and appreciated in the U.S. and Canada. He also was responsible for bringing the Doctor of Ministry degree that's recognized too. One of his interests is in the field of biotechnics and stem cell research. And he once was, I don't know how long ago this was, invited to South Africa to attend a conference that was put on bioethics. But he'll probably tell us a little bit more about that too. He has served on various committees of the LCIC. He's married to Anne, who is one of our wonderful registrars at the annual meeting every year. They belong to Mount Sinai Church. They have 2 children, one living in Nova Scotia, one in Toronto, and they have 2 grandchildren. Yes, Dr. Crossman, we do appreciate what you did at our board meetings when you were with us. It was a time of chuckles when Dr. Crossman was around. Now, let's turn to the third person that I'm going to introduce, and that is Julia Hendry. Julia is the head of the Archives and Special Collections at Wilfrid Laurier University. Julia came to Waterloo in 2010 after 10 years at the University of Illinois as a university archivist, and is really native Canadian from the Toronto area. When I was thinking about preparing these bios, and I thought of Julia as an archivist, thought many of us, most of us are really some kind of parallel archivist, because we all come to a point in our lives when we have to throw things away or save them for posterity. And I think that's probably what Julia does in a different way. So many of the times the possessions that we have take over, and we don't know what to do with them. But we have to. We have to make decisions. Things like, it occurred to me, pictures, and how many pictures we accumulate. I know we have downsized our whole slide collection to 400 on discs. And they were 1,000. So this is something that we have to do. We have to make decisions, and this is what Julia does in her everyday life. So Julia Hendry has a huge responsibility of the filing, the safekeeping of records and artifacts going back to 1911, from the days of Waterloo College to the Synod today, the Eastern Synod today, records that are kept up there. So let's welcome the three panelists that we have today, Dr. Bishop Curis, Dr. Crossman, and Julia Hendry for our history lesson.
Good afternoon. When Brenda first asked me to say a few words to you on this occasion, I volunteered most happily because I welcome the opportunity to express my appreciation to you for all that you have done for our seminary and for our church over these 99 years. You've heard that this afternoon, you've heard it this morning, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it needs to be said, and it needs to be said loudly and clearly. And I say thank you on behalf of our synodical family, and I still do that on occasion even though I'm retired. I say thank you for all that you have done. Now when I came here and rose to speak, our good friend Dick Crossman, Dr. Crossman, said to me, Bill, remember my little essay on Socrates, which I gave in my first year in college. And do you know what that was? His professor wanted each student to write a brief paragraph on the philosopher Socrates. This is what Dick wrote. Socrates was a very wise man who lived a long time ago. He made many long speeches. They killed him. I'll keep that in mind. But I will say a few words. I represent a generation that predates the distribution of quilts by the Women's Auxiliary of the Seminary. I entered Waterloo College in the fall of 1951. That's 40 years after the institution was founded in 1911. I graduated from the college in 54 and from the seminary in 57. I confess that I was a typical student, and I have to admit I was not fully apprised of all the good things the Women's Auxiliary was doing. I was aware of the auxiliary, and I applauded them when I had the opportunity. But as I graduated and served in parish ministry, and then in the synodical office for 20 years, 78 to 98, I became increasingly aware of the very fine work you do, and for the impression you have made upon so many pastors, and which they in turn have passed on to their congregations and their people. You have touched more people than you will ever realize. And they all want to say thank you to you for that. As you drive through the county roads here, and in many places, you often see a sign that says, "Adopt a road." You know what that means. A congregation or a community group has adopted 2 or 3 or 5 miles of a road and have committed to keeping it tidy and clean. I think what you have done over 99 years is adopt a candidate for ordained ministry. And in so doing, you have affirmed ordained ministry. You have affirmed the seminary, and you have affirmed the role of pastors in the life of the church. I want to applaud you for that. And you have adopted many a candidate. My wife and I vacation in Eastern Ontario. We've done that since I met her for over 50 years now in Papineau Lake, and we worship every Sunday when we're there in a church called Christ Lutheran Church. We say Maynooth, but it's really about 10 kilometers outside of Maynooth. And just a week ago, I mentioned to the pastor that I would be here addressing you. And did he have a word to say to you? That pastor has already been mentioned this morning. Reverend Adam Snook, very favorably mentioned. He's doing a great job in that congregation. That Sunday he began his sermon by telling how a load of firewood had been dumped in his driveway. I don't use that word dumped in any derogatory manner. I think that's what they call leaving a load of firewood. And he was overjoyed to receive it. It was getting cold in the evening. But he told me of how he and his wife Holly take the blanket or the quilt which they received. I know it was made by St. Peter's, Ottawa. They designed it. They produced it. They chose the color purple because they knew it was his favorite color. But you presented it to them. And he told me how he and his wife Holly were eager and happy to have that beautiful quilt to draw over themselves on the cold nights which were beginning. He said, tell them, thank you. You incarnate that understanding of the church's role that has recently been categorized by those few words in mission for others. You exist not for yourself, but to serve the seminary and its pastors, its candidates. I want to say thank you. You know, you have a history that is 99 years old, and one of our pastors just recently gave me a copy of a tiny fragment of a book by the Ontario Heritage Trust. This particular issue deals with the beginnings of Lutheran higher education in Ontario, and namely, specifically, in Waterloo, Ontario. It very briefly tells the story of how Lutheran higher education began here. By the way, I like to say that when I enrolled in Waterloo College, there were 200 students. 60 years later, there are over 30,000 full-time students in Waterloo. Am I right there? About 30,000? I think it's 35. In 60 years, that's unbelievable. I think we've done a great job, don't you? It's wonderful. Anyway, there is this sentence about the seminary. A women's auxiliary was organized in 1913, adding to the otherwise all-male institution. Well, one thing's certain, it's not all-male anymore, is it? But I think you need to know that. Your existence, your founding, is being recorded officially by the Ontario government in these Heritage Trust books. We are so grateful for you. When I was at college, I had English classes from Dr. Flora Roy. Some of you may remember, really an outstanding professor. One who really wanted to teach us how to respect our own minds. That's the gift in a teacher. And students never forget such a teacher. She wrote 2 books about Waterloo College and Waterloo Lutheran University. Believe it or not, in her section, her book on Waterloo Lutheran University, she makes a reference to the auxiliary. This is what she says. Waterloo Lutheran University, in her first chapter on finances, she says, I don't know how much money the Lutheran Church contributed to Waterloo Lutheran University. Not as much as the university would have hoped, I suspect. But then she said, a church ladies' auxiliary was helpful. They even provided a silver service for university teas. Now you're all too young to remember that, I'm sure. You're all too young to remember that. I just wanted you to know that the contribution you have made did reach beyond the borders of the Lutheran Church. I thought that was very important for you to know and understand. I guess what I would like to simply say with you, say to you and share with you is how much you have done and how far your ministry stretches. If you are normal, however, like most of us, you sometimes wonder, am I doing anything that has lasting value? I think every pastor asks that question. I think every teacher asks that question. I want to share a story with you and then I'll conclude. When I was in the synodical office, one of the jobs I had to do was call retired pastors and ask them if they'd be willing to serve in interim ministry for a congregation whose pastor is leaving. Now, what do you think their first question was? Do I have to teach confirmation class? Folks, I can understand the question. To this day, I can remember confirmation classes in my parish in Toronto. We had combined the 2 years. There were about 23 people in the class. I can distinctly remember one child in my 21 years of ordained ministry who drove me around the bend. I would come home and I would say to Barbara, why do I let him stay? I ought to boot him out. But I wasn't raised that way. The Lord called me to serve, and when the Lord puts a human being in front of me, that human being is precious in God's sight. And I did the best I could. But I breathed a prayer of thanksgiving when he was confirmed. I was still in office when I was in a synodical congregation. And during the coffee fellowship following, a young man with a lovely young lady, and she was holding a tiny baby in her arms, came to me and said, "Don't you remember me?" And I said, I'm sorry, I don't. And then he told me his name. I must have revealed my feelings in my face, because he said, "I know I was a terrible student and gave you a very difficult time. But I want to thank you for your patience with me. This is my wife. We are joining this church next week, and this is our new baby, just 6 weeks old, and she will be baptized next week." By now the tears were trickling down my cheeks, and I had misty eyes all the way home. I only share that story because I want you to believe that no matter how sometimes you wonder whether you're doing any good, you never know whose life you're touching. And you never know how long that seed of the word lies dormant in the ground and springs forth into life when the Lord chooses. I want to say to you, are you doing a good thing? You bet you are. Are you doing a worthy thing? You bet you are. Are you doing a meaningful ministry? You bet you are. When St. Paul wrote his letter to the congregations he founded in Galatians, he used this sentence: "Let us never grow weary in doing what is right." He repeated that when he wrote his second letter to the first congregation in Europe, a congregation he founded in Thessalonica. Members of the Women's Auxiliary, you are doing what is right. You bet you are. Good to be with you. God bless you.
Well, I too want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you on this occasion of 99 years, almost 100, of service. It's a magnificent thing that you have been doing. I've said that to you many times in other meetings just like this, but I truly mean it. It really is a joy. It's been a joy to work with you and to see all the things that you have accomplished. It's just marvelous. I'm only going to hold my remarks to a few brief remarks, because I want to give ample time for questions that you might have, or the sharing of interesting stories that you might have or I might have, some stories that you probably never heard of before, things that happened at the seminary, I'm just trying to keep it brief and then have an opportunity maybe for us to share. I also want to thank all the membership and the executive members over the years for the honor of sharing my thoughts tonight, or I guess it's the afternoon, and my working with the Women's Auxiliary. I don't know whether you know it or not. I discovered this in 1970 when I came, that your body, the auxiliary, is unique in most Lutheran seminaries. I came and I could hardly believe it. You know, here it is, a wonderful group giving support to the seminary, to its students, and to the church, and to the university, already working. And that is something that was coveted, I know, from my meetings with the presidents and deans and other seminaries. It was coveted by them. And in fact, some of them tried to start up a thing just like this. And so you are really a bringer of new things to the old Lutheran Church. And I have to also say I want to thank you personally for your support and love over the 35 years that I've had a chance to work with you, along with thanks for the quilt that you gave me on my retirement. It continues to bless Anne in my bedroom, and I really feel it is a wonderful symbol of all that I hold dear about the auxiliary. And in light of the 21 years that I've had service as principal and dean, I have two wishes for the seminary and for the Women's Auxiliary that I'd like to share with you. First, I'm sure you all are aware of the seminary bells, the ones that are in the bell tower there. But you may not know the whole story about what was there before. When the seminary building was built, the area below the bell tower was simply a vestibule. It was simply a place that people would gather before they went to worship or afterwards. And up in the bell tower, there were no bells. It was decided for whatever reason that they couldn't afford the bells. And so it always sat empty. Well, I remember coming into the office one day. It was in the winter. And lo and behold, I could hardly believe my eyes. It appeared that there were bells in the bell tower. And, but on closer examination, it turned out that they were garbage cans. Now, that's quite a ways up in the bell tower. And somehow, and to this day I don't know who, somehow some students of the seminary had gotten together, found a ladder or two, gotten bells, the garbage cans, hoisted up in, and tied up into where the bells would be normally. I can imagine if somebody would have fallen during that whole process. But in any event, that's the way they were. And of course, even asking around, nobody knew what happened. After that, I can say that people in the church, people from the auxiliary, and all got together and decided, you know, we really ought to have bells. And so they came about, and they were put up then. had recast and all that kind of thing, but they were put up then, and people were very proud of that, and the university was proud of that. Following that then, there was a resurgence of interest in all that the seminary had been from the time of Wells and Hall. You know, from that time when Women's Auxiliary did all kinds of things like prepared food and cleaned and whatever, you know. And through that resurgence, through that interest, we found the original stained glass windows that were in Wilson Chapel, and the Women's Auxiliary made it possible for them to be then reinstalled in that room down below the chapel called Bells. And then Ab Lorch, who was then working at the seminary, he was very good with food, with wood. And so he took the altar, and he kept the face of the altar, and it then was put on the end of that room. Women's Auxiliary then went further, and they purchased a magnificent rug for that whole area. I don't know how they quite did that, but they got a hold of somebody who wove rugs for Canadian embassies. And they put that together, and then they bought chairs to go around, and they made a baptistry. And that's what we did. And that has been cherished by students and people who ever come to the worship services at the seminary. They carry that love, that commitment, that interest in their very hearts. And you put it there. You can be very proud. I think an interesting point in all this is that the working together of so many people on that one project, and there are many others that I can mention, maybe I will later on, but it symbolized and affirmed that the seminary and the Women's Auxiliary and the whole body was a relationship that came from the bottom up, not the top down. All the people pulled together to make that happen. You see, I think that's one thing that I would wish would carry on and that can be reaffirmed again and again in the years to come, that the seminary and Women's Auxiliary is a family. It's a bigger team, and that it reaches out beyond the seminary to all people who have been through that place, past, present, future, to all the people in the community that we live in. It's there, and that's a wonderful thing, and it's something that you have created. I think that, as I said before, that sense of family, that sense of community, being all part of a team, it's seen in the gifts of the quilts that you give to the students who are enrolled. I know just at this celebration of the quilts and the giving that goes out to the students. And I just applaud that wonderful sense of giving that you carry on. And that reaches out into the university as well. I remember university chaplains and the way in which they had Shrove Tuesday, you know, making the pancakes beforehand, and how they served all the students at the university. And that also the work of the Women's Auxiliary reached out through all the programs at the seminary, some of which I don't know exactly what the state of those programs are, but I think they still continue. There is the joint MSW, MDiv, MTS programs, the MA programs at the university, with religion and culture or some other programs. Anyway, my hope, my first hope is that spirit that you have had for 99 years, that you continue to have that, and I know you will. You know, because I've experienced it. And so the future then is bright because you help make it bright. The second wish I would have, beyond the one for being a family and continuing that old family community tradition, comes about through a story that I'll tell. Some of you may know Tom O'Connor, Dr. Tom O'Connor, who taught for a number of years. I think he still continues to teach at the seminary. Some people, you know, they know of his work in counseling, but they may not know the story of how he got there. He was, in fact, a Roman Catholic priest in Sudbury. And he had 1 year off to do some extra education. And so he came to the seminary and took courses in counseling, was caught up in the whole spirit of community, and decided he wanted to go on and do further work. And he did. He went on and did training for a PhD. And then, because of the place that the seminary had become and that experience he had, in fact, I think he was one of the people who were, you know, sometimes students like this year, they speak about what brought them there to the seminary. I think he addressed you when he first came. And that continued. And interestingly enough, he met a young woman, and they got married, and of course he had to get special dispensation being a priest, but he was happy to do that, you know, because, and he's been with us ever since. And so there's a dedication, I think that's an example of the dedication to excellence that has continued on in the seminary. And continued on because of your support. And your contribution to the CBE is a big part of that. That clinical experience is central to the counseling program, and to, in fact, a lot of the other programs, MDiv program and so forth. And so that's that financial support that you give has made it possible for that excellence to continue. Further, I think, just to demonstrate that excellence, you know, they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating, you know, and so I would say, if in fact the excellence is bred and in part of all that the seminary is and all that the Women's Auxiliary supports, then there should be products of that. And I think that I can't identify them all, but let me just name a few that you might recognize. The National Bishop of the ELCIC, Susan Johnson, is a graduate. Currently, the Eastern Synodical Bishop, Michael Price, is a graduate. The past director of the Church and Society Division of the ELCA, that's the Lutherans in the States, Rebecca Larson, is a graduate. The recent or current chair of the Board of Governors, Mark Knable, a graduate. Current assistant to the National Bishop, Paul Gayers, a graduate. The recent past assistant to the Eastern Synod Bishop, and currently seminary faculty member, Mark Harris, a graduate. And of course, the current principal of WLS, David Fimmer, a graduate. Clearly, there has always been a dedication for growth and excellence, a dedication that I saw in the time I was principal dean. And it's my hope and my desire that your support of that kind of excellence continues. I know that it will, because I know that you have a heart and a care for the quality of the people at the seminary, and that's played out over all 99 years. Well, in closing, I would leave you with just to call your attention to a biblical passage. It's very short and it's very to the point. The Bible calls on us to practice love, do justice, and walk humbly with God. And I can't think of a better description of the women who do it. You make that passage come alive. I know you've always been guided by that passage, and you will be in the future. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you have done to make this, the community, the faculty, everyone connected to the seminary, to make them proud. So I only leave you the words, God bless you all. Thank you.
I was talking to my brother last night on the phone, who is a stand-up comedian, of all things. And I was telling him how nervous I was to be on this panel and to be speaking after the bishop, after Bishop Harris. And so he advised me to think of the bishop as my opening act. So I'd like to thank you, Bishop Harris and Dr. Crossman, for allowing me to talk. I'm so happy to be here to speak to you today in your 99th year as an organization. So what I thought I would do is just take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about what we do in the Laurier Archives and about how the Women's Auxiliary fits into our mission. In my capacity as head of the archives at Laurier, I oversee a few rooms of records, which look like this, and document the history of the university and the Eastern Synod of the ELCIC. So we have the minutes of the Board of Governors, of the University Board of Governors, going back to 1911, for example. We have a complete run of the College Board, which is a student newspaper that goes back to 1926. We have boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of photographs. And we have the kinds of objects that document student life on campus, like this stuffed golden hawk that is living in my office right now, and a Waterloo College jacket. This one is modeled here by the donor, WLS grad Ken Ward, and he sent this photo in, and he sent the jacket just last year to show that he can still button it. We also have the records of the Eastern Synod of the ELCIC. have records of individual parishes, we have sermons, we have Luther League scrapbooks, ladies' aid minutes from across Eastern Canada, among many other items. Rows and rows of records from the Eastern Synod. Those are just some examples. We also, I'm very happy to report, have a collection of records from the Waterloo Lutheran Seminary's Women's Auxiliary, with records going back to 1931. And here it is. It's a small collection, just one box, but there's a lot to learn from this box, I've discovered. So in order to prepare for my talk today, I took some time to read through the correspondence files that are found in this box. One of the kind of frustrating things about being an archivist is that although you organize, you preserve the material, you help people use it, you don't often get a chance to sit down and just read it. So I always welcome an opportunity to take a close look at an interesting collection. The other reason I was interested in having a look at this collection was that it's been used a lot lately. And so I've heard secondhand from our researchers about how interesting it is. One of the people who used the collection extensively was Andrew Thompson, who wrote the university's history last year. And on several occasions, Andy remarked to me that for much of the early history of the university, he thinks that it would not have been possible to keep the doors open without the support of the Women's Auxiliary. And I think he made this point persuasively in his book. So reading through the correspondence files, I came to the same conclusion. The box contains an extraordinary record of your organization doing just yeoman's work of raising money, large sums, year after year for almost a century. Through fundraising campaigns that included direct appeals to Lutheran women. So these are some of the examples of some of the brochures that are in our collection. Slideshows that were distributed across the Eastern Synod. And through the annual visiting day, or cake days, as the students call it.
Seminary cake.
That's a seminary cake. The Women's Auxiliary supported the operating budget of the university year after year. You might be interested to know that we have the recipe for the seminary cake in the collection. And I think that Dorinda has persuaded me that I need to try to make it, despite the fact that the instructions are kind of sparse. But I have a tube pan, so I think we can do it. In 1958, for example, I learned that the Women's Auxiliary donated $4,000 for acquisitions in the library. And this was astonishing to me when I read it. We would be delighted to get a donation of $4,000 in the library today. That would buy a lot of volumes. But in 1958, that would have allowed the library to at least double their holdings and certain of it. So my colleagues in the library and I are indebted to our organization as well. The correspondence files also make it clear that it was the Women's Auxiliary who were concerned with making Waterloo College and then Waterloo Lutheran an inviting and comfortable place for the students to live, work, and study. Not only did the auxiliary provide the funds to furnish and decorate the student residences, but it was the women of the auxiliary who were the ones to monitor the state of the student living accommodations. And I found that the executive committee did not mince words when they found the accommodations to be lacking. Writing to a key member, Mrs. Archmater in Nova Scotia in 1942, the executive committee described the situation in the residence this way. The executive of the auxiliary has visited the school on different occasions and finds the buildings as well as the furnishings in a deplorable state. To be truthful, we have to feel ashamed of the furnishings, and it is on this account that the executive took things into their hands and got permission of the House Committee to do what we can to improve things. And sure enough, the correspondence for the next year describes the efforts to purchase new furnishings, to renovate the kitchen, to sew new drapes, and to purchase open stock dishes at a discount from a friendly retailer. And this is an image of a Wilson Hall common room from around that time, around the late 40s. And of course, to continue the project of providing clothes for the students and residents. Finally, reading through the correspondence files, I was reminded what an important advocate the Women's Auxiliary has been for women on campus throughout the history of the university. Not only has the Women's Auxiliary provided scholarships for women, but throughout the 20th century, it was the Women's Auxiliary who were concerned about making the college welcoming for young women who traveled across the country to live and study here. At the annual meeting in 1960, you all passed a resolution that read in part, the Women's Auxiliary of the Waterloo Lutheran University, interested in the welfare of the girls who are now attending our school, and looking forward to an ever-increasing attendance of female students, feels that a more satisfactory living accommodations must be made for them. The Auxiliary considers this an urgent issue, not only for the present women students, but for those to come, and feels that if it is not remedied, it may influence women's attendance in the future. So today we have a whole office of paid staff whose job it is to make sure that the university is an inviting place for a diverse group of students. But in 1960, it was the Women's Auxiliary who was doing that work of thinking about what it is that we need to do to be able to attract women to the university. The resolution goes on to recommend that the university procure additional residence facilities for women on campus. So here's a picture of Conrad Hall, the first women's residence that the Auxiliary was so fundamental in opening, but that soon filled up. And we have some images of interior shots of the living accommodations for women that benefited from the attentions of the Auxiliary. So most of you probably appreciate the important contributions that your organization has made for the history of the university. And probably none of what I'm saying is news to you. What you might not know, however, is that by ensuring that your records are preserved in the archives, you're continuing to support the scholarly mission of the university. During the university centennial year, just last year, the records were used by a number of university offices who were telling our story, from our public affairs department to Dr. Thompson when he was writing his history of the university, to students participating in the archives essay contest. Also during our centennial year, the archives partnered with the Department of Women's Studies to create a project for first-year students to conduct primary research on the history of women at Laurier. So over the course of the year, almost 200 students crammed into our little reading room right there to pore over the boxes and learn about the history of women at Laurier. And I would say that a good third of these students wrote about the Women's Auxiliary. They wrote about its importance to the university. They wrote about the ways in which Women's Auxiliary members were important early university leaders. So in general, archives have done a good job in documenting the work of men. We have boxes and boxes and boxes of records about the Senate, the presidents, vice presidents, and deans, offices that have long been dominated by men. But often, the work of women is less well documented. So I was particularly happy that we were able to provide the students and scholars with the record of the Women's Auxiliary as evidence of the crucial work that women have been doing throughout the history of the university. And they were happy to find it, because increasingly, this is what historians are looking for. They're looking to look past the powerful men and find out what was happening behind the scenes, and to learn about the important but often less celebrated work of women. So, as you celebrate your own centennial next year, I hope that we can help you with your celebrations by conducting research or providing photos, hosting tours, or preparing displays. And I hope that you will consider continuing to transfer your records to the archives so that the important work of your organization will be preserved and made available for researchers for years to come. Thank you.
Our speakers are going to come up to the front again. Does anybody have any questions for them? And did you learn a lot of things? I did, and I knew some of those things. I have a picture of the garbage cans in the tower. I'm curious who did that, because it would have been an amazing feat. And if they're alive today, I'd like to hire them to do some work at my house. They must be really good engineers or something. Any questions for our panel today?
Julia, will you tell us what your training is as an archivist?
Oh, sure. Well,
It's long.
well, I had an academic background in history and a degree in library information science, and a lot of experience overseeing the records at the University of Illinois at Chicago.
Anything else? Anybody else?
Just a note of interest, I was reading through some articles that we had received earlier through the Women's Auxiliary about what the Women's Auxiliary did do in those early years. And we're so thankful we don't have to do that anymore. They used to come in and make all the students meals. They did their laundry. There were shelves of preserves that they would bring in they would preserve for them. They would wash their bedding and make up their beds. And they did darn their socks for they sewed for them, they did all those things. So I think we're getting off a little easy now.
And the history of the seminary cake, which we did sell the recipe and serve it to you at an annual meeting, I think for 90th? Yes. That actually happened, I came across the person, and I don't have her name, but she's written up in our Golden Book of Honor, and she brought the cake to sell at a tea bazaar. And instead of it being sold, they cut it up and served it. And from there, it became a favorite that the women and everyone kept requesting. So eventually, it was served so often, it became the seminary cake, and she did donate the recipe, and in the mid-60s, at an annual meeting, they sold the recipe for 10 cents, 10 cents as a fundraiser, to raise some money. And that picture of the three ladies with the cake, that is the seminary cake. So, any other? Yes, Diane?
I just want to say, especially to Julia, that archives have a long biblical history of thousands of years, dating back to Noah's time, because he had bees. And where did he keep his bees? In the ark eyes.
Also, as Betty was saying, that downsizing requires you to decide whether to keep things or to throw things. If you do come across any items from the Women's Auxiliary for annual meetings or whatever, you can always bring them to us. I will be archiving with Julia in the next year, so I have quite a number of things that I have kept for her. We need to get them to her. So if there's no further comments or anything, I'd just like to thank her.
I have a question I would like to ask Julia. Is there a method by which archival information is preferably channeled to you from church archival information? I mean, if a congregation has archival information that they think you should have, should they channel that directly to you or through the synod?
I think that it would be easiest just to call me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's good
You
too.
can call me, but yeah, this is actually a nice opportunity to put in another plug, is that we do collect the records of individual parishes in the Eastern Synod collection. And so we're interested in the kinds of parish records that you have that are not currently being used. So do get in touch with us if you are looking for something to do with your records, whatever you're looking about.
Okay, thank you very much. Ginny is here to thank you.
Good-looking group. It's my pleasure this afternoon to have the opportunity to thank our three panelists and speakers for the messages that they brought to us on my 99th year. As a newcomer to the auxiliary and to the board, I learned a lot. Thank you. And I also felt that we were validated as a group and as our history for all that has gone on in the last 99 years. And it's nice sometimes when you're working in the background, and occasionally in the foreground, to get that validation. And we certainly got it in spades from our speakers today. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
When Betty was introducing the speakers, she mentioned a lot of their involvements and talents. And one of the things that I would like to add on a personal note with regard to Bishop Hughes is that he's a good curling skip. I had the pleasure of curling with him a number of times a few years ago, and it was great fun. We learned a lot, and he's an excellent sport person. I think in terms of Dr. Kaufman, I like the story about the garbage cans because it reminded me that just as when we got started 99 years ago, you start with humble beginnings that sometimes inspire yourselves and others to move forward in a hurry and much further than you anticipated. And I think that from our humble beginnings, we've built a pretty strong history, as was attested to today. And the challenge now is to take that and ask the next question: where do we go from here? What will the next 100 years bring? And hopefully we will all have fun figuring that out together. But the dedication to excellence was a big part of the message that I think we need to carry forward. And also the part about walking humbly. You know, when we get the kind of accolades we got today, it's easy to get a swell head. and maybe we tended to rest on our laurels. But times are changing rapidly, and I'm sure the people in the business of archives are getting caught up in all the technology and different ways of preserving history, different from the past and those boxes that you alluded to. So we've got another 100 years to look forward to, hopefully. And on behalf of the members here and the members who aren't here, we'd like to thank our speakers today for their inspiring messages and for taking the time to come and share them with us.